Welcome back into the Play-by-Play, a sports media talk show from Awful Announcing, where we are also thrilled to announce we have signed Philip Rivers. I'm Brendon Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing, joined by Ben Axelrod and Drew Lerner. It is a full roster show today. All three of us are here. It is Tuesday, December 9th. Thank you for finding us wherever you get your podcasts. Hit subscribe or follow if you haven't already. We're here for you 3 times a week, breaking down all things sports media. Today, Paramount, the hostile takeover Hail Mary that it is throwing to try to buy Warner Brothers Discovery and what it means for sports fans and media consumers. Plus, why the hell are there so many animated altcasts? But first, Notre Dame. The talk of the college football playoff final selection show on Sunday. They will be out of the college football playoff, guys, and it was all that anyone could talk about, and for good reason, because they were in for every other previous 12-team pool. They obviously are an institution, and they occupy a very strange place in the college football ecosystem, being that they do not belong to a conference, have a prominent role in the committee, and have a lot of alumni that get to talk about this stuff. So, Ben, I just wanted to maybe establish what's the baseline we should be understanding as to why we think Notre Dame fell out at the last second here, because the lead of the committee, Hunter Yurachek, basically talked in circles when asked this question by Reese Davis on the show. Effectively, the head-to-head with Miami combined with some of the results from conference championship weekend. Can you summarize it for us so we can at least start there before we poke holes or question what exactly went down here?
Yeah, I mean, so do you want what the committee would tell you or what I actually think happened?
Combine the two, but let's start with what the committee would say, I think, and then we can get into what we think actually happened, because I want to throw some theories off you guys.
Okay, so what the committee would say is the reason that head-to-head did not matter is head-to-head is only a tiebreaker when you are directly comparing two teams. So in this instance, Miami and Notre Dame played in week 1. Miami won. Miami has the head-to-head edge. And so all throughout this, they left enough buffer between Notre Dame and Miami, with Notre Dame ahead of Miami, where they said head-to-head does not matter. We are not at the head-to-head tiebreaker yet. These are not two teams we are comparing. I believe we entered conference championship weekend with Notre Dame, then BYU, then Miami. And so BYU loses the Big 12 championship game, falls out of the top 12 altogether. That puts Miami and Notre Dame directly up against each other. And so that does give the committee the ability to use head-to-head as a tiebreaker. So that would be their explanation, is these are not two teams we were comparing previously, so we were not factoring head-to-head. Well, now here we are come the end of conference championship week. We are comparing them, and Miami does own that head-to-head tiebreaker. So that would be the committee's explanation for what happened.
Okay, so if we start there, Drew, what do you make of that explanation? And I think the thing that's come into focus is this conference championship. How does it matter? Does it matter? Should these games even be played? Are we about to say goodbye to them anyway because the college football playoff's going to expand and maybe there's even less of a use for them, and they have some kind of conference-based way of these early round games to basically kind of treat them as a similar thing, but they're just part of the CFP. It felt like the value of the conference championship performance went in both directions this week. And I think that is, before we get back to Notre Dame, a big part of why so many people were angry, because BYU gets docked, and obviously their athletic department had a field day online, going at the resumes and everything, while Alabama didn't seem to. Notre Dame doesn't even participate in those. So how does that work? how do you wrap your head around that part of it? And do you think the best solution is just to get rid of them?
I don't wrap my head around it. Like, I don't think there is like a logically consistent explanation for what the committee did. And I think you can apply that kind of to many previous years as well. Like, this isn't an isolated incident. And to me, it just screams like, how can anyone take college football as a sport, at least in its postseason, seriously? Like, legitimately.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's, the second most popular sport in America for obvious reasons. We love football. There's a lot of tribal instincts that go into college football. That's what makes it great to follow as kind of this like spectator sport. And like outside of the sport, it's like amazing to follow because of that, because of the passionate fan bases and all of that. But like, if you're going in and trying to apply logic to what this committee is doing, like, you're not going to find a satisfying answer, in my opinion. And I think like the big picture question here, at least in my mind, this is kind of what I've been mulling since the committee's decision on Sunday, is like, is this going to have an impact on the popularity of college football long term if they can't seem to get it together and find a way to like make it make sense? Because every year it's something, and to me it's just an exhausting exercise that we have to do every December now. And I honestly think the more teams you add, the worse the issue gets.
Counterpoint, I think it's actually going a long way toward bringing in casual fans, and maybe at the expense of certain institutionalized local fan bases like Notre Dame's or whoever the, disappointed, left out group might be in a given year. But like, yes, ASU made it last year, and so that obviously, bolstered my interest. But I'm in this year. I'm super psyched to watch whatever happens. Like, am I going to be annoyed when JMU gets crushed? Like, sure, I'm probably not going to watch that game, and maybe there would have been a more competitive option. But it's the same when the Texans have the shit beaten out of them every wild card weekend in the NFL, and we don't really talk about it, right? Like, it doesn't matter because we just sort of understand, well, they won the AFC South, so that's all there is to it. I think that like part of it is this idea that these things are up for debate kind of makes the conversation more infuriating. But at the same time, like, I think the product is better. And like when there's more money flowing in, which was bound to happen as NIL became legal, and now these direct payments are legal and whatever else, like sponsors and different companies were going to get in, and you had to figure out a way to make this thing bigger. And so if it was going to become a national sport because we decided to stop treating these kids like unpaid labor, then this feels like a pretty decent pathway to doing it. And we're probably going to get even closer to a more like equitable and reasonable place before long, I would think. And, maybe that's just 2 mega conferences or whatever. Like, there's a million theories out there for what that eventually looks like. But I feel like the numbers and everything is telling me that people actually eat this shit up, and it's just kind of par for the course.
Listen, I agree with everything you just said there, Brendon. I think the expansion has kept a lot of fan bases engaged throughout the season. It's been really beneficial to the commercial aspect of college football. No debate there. I simply do not believe that we can sustain a business based off of the soap opera that is the college football playoff selection committee. There has to be something objective here going on, because like, we cannot do this every year and keep fans engaged for the long term, in my opinion. That's
it might create a sense of that it's an unserious product, right, Ben? What do you think?
I think this has always been a part of college football. I mean, we used to have debates about the BCS. The playoff was supposed to fix the BCS. We used to pick a national champion just by letting sports writers vote on it. Like this, there is Brendon, and you and I were talking 6 months ago about some guy named Bubba Cunningham, who I have since learned is the AD of North Carolina, because the number 8 seeded West Virginia Mountaineers got left out for college sports, just by its nature, by its enormity, we're never going to be able to crown like a true national champion the way the NFL crowns a Super Bowl champion. Like there's just no system that could level the playing field for all the competing interests. And I think that's ultimately now, as this thing has expanded, I think that is where the issue has come in, especially with conference championship weekend, is we are not applying the same standards across all of these conferences. I think on the one hand, let's take me and you, Brendon. I just watched Ohio State play a fairly meaningless Big Ten title game. In fact, I would argue Ohio State benefited from losing that game and getting an easier path through the playoff. A year ago, your alma mater, Arizona State, got into the playoff because they won their conference championship game. Like that was a de facto playoff game. So it's like, and then you throw in the ACC, which one team's playing for a playoff spot. If the other team wins, the ACC might just get left at, like, it's just a giant clusterfuck. Like there's no uniform standings. Then you throw in Notre Dame, which doesn't play in a conference. Like, just imagine if there was a team that's like, hey, we're actually going to play halves instead of quarters. Like, they're just playing by a totally different set of rules. I just think we're at a point now where all of these teams are involved, but they're all coming at it from totally different angles as far as how they can even qualify for the playoff in the first place.
I don't think it's great when, like, to I guess, level set how I like personally feel about what Drew was kind of getting at there. Like, I don't love the idea of the obviousness of something being done just for growth and money being put at the forefront. And like, yeah, the other past iterations of this were not perfect, or maybe you could say even better. I don't know, depending on how you felt about each of the iterations as we've gotten here. But I think the other part of this that is broken apart, and Notre Dame has been at the front of breaking it apart, is the bowl system, right? And like to weave in what you just said about the Big Ten championship game, Ben, like the idea that these games are played on neutral fields makes this stuff even less impactful, because like Chiefs Bills in the past has been for the number one seed in the AFC potentially. You know, the Big Ten championship game, it's for the number one seed, but like, why do I care about that? It's going to be played in some random place, and like theoretically you might face a better team, but these rankings are so goofy that you don't even know if you're going to play a better or worse team being one or two. Like, you know, that stuff is silly. The bowl system used to be an imperfect solution to some of this that was based on the ranking in your conference and actually felt a little bit more directly equivalent to performance, right? If you were the X ranked team in X conference, you played in this bowl, and like it kind of did have a level of prestige. Notre Dame says to hell with all of that. We're going to, you know, pack up and go home, and you guys can take your bowls and shove it up, you know what? And like, you know, that I think this was bound to happen. Like Sean Keeley wrote about this for our website, that like, you know, Notre Dame leaving, not participating in the bowl, and some of these other teams, you know, Cam Ward last year not playing in the second half, and all these things that have kind of slowly feel like they've amplified over time. Again, when you place the emphasis where this sport has chosen to place the emphasis on this very subjective, ever-growing playoff, then you are chipping away at the other stuff. That's kind of the choice they made. But yeah, I feels like the obvious answer is just to make the playoff less subjective, right? Like that just kind of feels like, you know, it just equates directly. You finish here, you're in. And at least then there's less argument over it. And maybe that eventually leads to more consolidation of these conferences. But the thing that I wanted to talk about more from a media angle too, before we move on, is this tweet from Brady Quinn, obviously a Notre Dame alum, obviously a Fox Sports employee. But, you know, kind of alluding to the fact that ESPN wanted Notre Dame to play in a bowl because they, you know, run the bowls. The Pop-Tart Bowl was the one they would have participated in. That is an ESPN broadcast. But this kind of thing of using them as a pawn for their playoff selection show, the ACC network playing this Miami Notre Dame game on repeat, was a weird subplot that happened here. The selection show feels like a big part of what's going on here in terms of the unseriousness that Drew was getting at, Ben, as well as just needless. It's just kind of infuriating fans for sport is what it feels like, especially when Hunter Yurachek comes on and can't even explain the damn thing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel a little more conflicted about it because I've seen people. I mean, I think Kirk Herbstreit suggested that. I know some other prominent personalities have suggested, like, let's just do away with this thing. I think, like, people need to know what they're playing for, even if Notre Dame would argue, hey, we thought we knew what we were playing for, and ultimately we got left out. But, like, I think just even from a fan consumption standpoint, you kind of want to know, at least have like a baseline idea of what the stakes are heading into each weekend. Circling back though, what I think happened, and this ties into what Brady Quinn said to a degree, I don't think Notre Dame was used as a pawn. Like I think the committee wanted to put Notre Dame in. I think that if they had their like original way,
but not as much as they wanted to put Alabama in.
Well, I would agree with that because I think what happened is Miami ran a very successful campaign. Like Miami campaigned for 3 weeks and basically said, you also had the element of Texas getting left out. I think that's an underrated part of this. Texas getting left out and Texas arguing, okay, well, we're just not going to schedule Ohio State anymore. If we're going to get left out because we lost Ohio State in week 1, why should we play Ohio State in week 1 if 3 losses is going to hurt us more than having 2 losses? And so I think what happened though is the committee saw the campaign from Miami, saw Miami saying, why does head-to-head not matter here? Like, why are we playing these important games if we're not going to benefit from them? And they did say, hey, we need to like save some of our regular season. We do need to factor in head-to-head. So whether you agree with it or not, I think Miami was very effective in getting that message across. And I think ultimately that's what the committee acquiesced to.
This is so ridiculous, though. You're talking about this as if it's like a presidential campaign. These are games that happened in August or September, like September 1st, right? Like this should be baked into the rankings. There shouldn't have to be a week of campaigning. And
I think the show creates the opening for this campaign too, is just what I would like to note. Like the idea that this is constantly being up for consideration by not only the committee, but the panel of people that ESPN puts on television to talk about the selection each week creates this idea that this stuff is somehow able to be lobbied for rather than just what these people tell us it is.
I think that's a good point. And the one other thing I'll bring up is, and that we haven't really touched on, is like the counterfactual of if Virginia had ended up winning the ACC championship, right? Like, I don't actually think Miami would be sitting in the playoff today if Virginia had just won the ACC championship game and gotten the auto bid for the conference. Like, I think the committee feels a lot less pressure to put Miami in at that point. And that's another issue in and of itself. It's like, if we're going to allow all this politicking into the sport, like, can we at least just admit, like, we're doing this because it's for the drama, to try to, feed all the mouths that all the stakeholders that are involved in college football? Because like if you at least admit it, then fine. Like, we're doing this for the commercial purposes of like satisfying the ACC. Like, that's at least an understandable and a logical statement. Doing what the committee did on Sunday, like, there's just you can't, square the circle here.
Mm-hmm. I will say, in defense of the college football playoff, they have shown a willingness to tinker with the format already. Like we saw last year, there was an obvious flaw, Brendon, no offense, in Arizona State and Boise State getting buys. Like, that did not make much sense. We already know the rules are changing next year so that Notre Dame
played a hell of a game against Texas, though. I'll just say
they did
really showed up for ourselves. Did not embarrass ourselves there.
Cam Scadaboo's coming out party there for a lot of people. We know next year the rules will change to where if Notre Dame was in the top 12 or whatever, they would be in. We know the ACC champion, even if it was 7-5 Duke. I mean, that's another thing. The ACC just needs to change its tiebreaker rules. That's absurd. And so, like, they are willing to adapt and change. And I just think, like, this year was kind of a nightmare scenario where the ACC doesn't get a bid. You're in a situation where you have to allow 2 Power 5 teams in. That puts you in a situation where another at-large who would have otherwise gotten in is getting bumped out. Like, this could have just worked out in a nice little situation where Miami plays for the ACC championship, they win, they get in, and then you're leaving James Madison out instead of leaving Notre Dame out. Like, that would have been a pretty great field. It just, this was kind of a doomsday scenario for the CFP.
All right.
Before we move on, can we at least talk about Notre Dame for a little bit? I feel like we've kind of skimmed over. Like, sure. What the fuck? Like, has this been? It's been like a 3-day cry fest from their AD about, you know, the ACC campaigning against that. Like, this is another just like microcosm of everything that is wrong with college football in my mind. Like, everyone feels like they have to play the victim in order to, you know, get what they want from the committee down the line. Like, I think if there wasn't actually an ability to influence the committee through this public relations campaign, which is we already kind of addressed with Miami, it was pretty effective to get them in. I don't think Notre Dame's AD would be out here on the Dan Patrick show and holding press conferences, you know, acting like it was a freaking war crime committed against the university that they were left out in the number 13 slot. Like, come on, this is everything that is wrong with college football.
I will say, them getting the rug pulled out from them, like, I understand why they feel the way they feel. Like, if you were a fan of any program and you basically thought you were in and then saw it slowly slip away and then saw it ultimately turn and go against you, like, I get why Notre Dame feels that way. But where they lose me is the complaints about the ACC lobbying for Miami. Because one, at least publicly, the ACC did not really lobby that hard outside of like an ACC network marathon of Miami games. Two, Miami's an ACC school. Like, I don't care about your scheduling agreement. I don't care that you have softball and basketball and field hockey and all these other sports with the ACC. Notre Dame football is not an ACC program. The ACC is not beholden to Notre Dame football in any meaningful way. In fact, they are beholden to Miami to get them in as their lone representative. So, like, that to me is just like Notre Dame totally losing the plot and total
or Duke.
Notre Dame exception.
All they care.
They were lobbying for Duke as hard as they were lobbying for Miami. But that to me is just peak Notre Dame exceptionalism.
Yeah. All right. Drew, let's talk about Paramount and its last-ditch effort to potentially acquire Warner Brothers Discovery. The whole, what is it, kit and caboodle? Is that what we call that? The whole thing, the cable networks and the studio and the streamer and all of it, as opposed to Netflix's agreement to acquire Warner Brothers, just the studio and HBO Max, which was agreed upon earlier this week for $83 billion. What's your take on the likelihood of this potentially coming together for Paramount and kind of where this goes next, as people wonder if the end result might just be that this takes way longer overall to happen?
You know, I think it was already going to take a long time no matter what happened. And I'm not sure I feel comfortable handicapping exactly like how likely Paramount's takeover bid is going to, you know, if it'll actually come to fruition. But I do think the crux of the argument here from Paramount, if you kind of put aside the regulatory argument that maybe they'll have a better chance at you know, getting a deal approved by the Trump administration, the financial argument from Paramount is essentially hinged on the value of Discovery Global, which is going to be the spin-off company from Warner Brothers Discovery that has all of the declining cable assets, TNT, TBS, CNN, etc., which under the Netflix deal, they are saying will probably be valued at around $3 to $4 per share, which will obviously be given to the WBD shareholders as it stands if the Netflix deal goes through. Paramount is essentially arguing that that part of the deal kind of misvalues the Discovery Global assets. They kind of, David Ellison said that those assets are maybe worth $1 per share, which if you take the combined value of Netflix's deal, which is about $27 per share for the streaming and studios, plus the $3 to $4, that gets you to around $31 per share for Warner Brothers. Paramount's offer for the entirety of Warner Brothers Discovery is $30 per share. So if you listen to Ellison and Discovery Global is just worth $1, that would put Netflix's offer at about 28 instead of the 31 that they say. Paramount's offers at 30. So it really comes down to how you value that part of the company. And Paramount's argument to shareholders is saying, hey, those assets separated from any sort of corporate backing are going to die. Like there's no future for those assets just out on their own on an island. But if you combine them with Paramount, right, and you combine TNT Sports with CBS Sports, you combine CNN with CBS News, like there's opportunities there to actually maintain the value of these legacy assets for a longer tail than if they were just out there on their own trying to struggle to survive. So that to me is the crux of the argument for Paramount. There's obviously the regulatory aspect, which they're going to argue hard for. But if we're looking at the financials of it, I believe that is kind of what they're arguing to the shareholders.
It's a weird thing where I don't feel like those Discovery Global networks, as opposed to the ones that the Ellisons just acquired with the Paramount acquisition, there's not a lot of brand value there. Like, outside of CNN, which even then, I don't know if it's really brand value, just they're a big company, but like, I guess Cartoon Network, that side of it is probably the one you would point to, but like, TNT Sports, TBS, those things are shells of what they previously were. Whereas like, some of these things like MTV and others where you look at or BET, you look at like the library and the brand value and the kind of tradition, maybe there would be a case. I'm not, a finance expert there, but it is the kind of fascinating part of it as we look forward to like, what would these networks even really be for the average person consuming them once this goes forward. But the other part of this, there's obviously been the side of, Larry Ellison having a relationship with Donald Trump and the, canvassing and lobbying that's been going on both sides of this, and the argument over which deal is more likely to get through an antitrust examination, which goes to the length of time that this might take that we were hinting at a moment ago. I've been fascinated by this idea, and obviously it was going to have to be the argument, but, Netflix kind of saying, hey, streaming consolidation that could come from our purchase of HBO Max, the competition that we would be going for there would be versus other sources of digital video like YouTube and TikTok, not, us versus them as far as streamers go. Right? Like it's kind of the same thing SiriusXM did when they merged, where it was like, hey, our competition isn't satellite versus satellite radio. It's other radio, and it's, music streamers or whatever the landscape was back when that deal happened. Right? Like this is kind of how it goes. But Ben, do you like find that to be a realistic argument? Like, do you think that that's kind of where this is going, where Netflix can make a credible case that they have to make deals like this in order to compete with these other places people can go to watch stuff? Or do you think it's just nonsense and kind of what they have to say to try to get this over the hump?
I don't think it's that crazy. Like, I think about it in terms of my own anecdotal, like personal media habits and media consumption. And like a Netflix show, if I'm going to watch a Netflix show, what it's competing against for me is like playing video games. Like I might, and you wouldn't think of a video game as being competition against Netflix, but they basically are both competing for my time and for my energy and for my resources. Like that's, so I understand the argument. I don't know how much it like would hold up in a court of law or under the jurisdiction of, give any given administration, let alone this one. So I think that's probably obviously what matters most here, but I see the argument being made. I just don't know how much it would hold up.
Drew, especially when you look at the fact that Warner Brothers was licensing content to Netflix. I feel like that kind of proves the point we're talking about here, where these platforms are just one place where content acquisition and consumer payments and everything that goes into this business happens. Like There's all these other places where people are spending their money, spending their time. I think the argument is fairly reasonable as well, to think that HBO could get swallowed up into Netflix and it not necessarily making a huge monopolistic dent the way that, Netflix and YouTube merging. That'd be, the end of the world. But like this is not that.
Yeah, I think for anyone like us, like a forward-looking media analyst that is very familiar with how the attention economy works and how people spend their time and choose to spend their time, it is a compelling argument. That being said, I think it's a bit of an esoteric argument for the Department of Justice, who will be looking at this probably from a more traditional lens and see a major movie studio and Warner Brothers, a legacy movie studio, merging with the biggest streamer. And then you have, HBO Max. I don't know if they're the fourth or fifth biggest streamer, something like that in the United States, merging with the first biggest streamer. Over in Europe, like it's even worse. Like HBO Max is like the second or third largest streamer in a lot of markets. Netflix is still the biggest. So I think those are kind of the arguments that regulators are going to be looking at, more so than kind of the broader picture of like what you're competing for people's attention. And I thought David Ellison actually kind of put it pretty succinctly. And I actually sympathize a bit with this argument. It's like saying Coke and Pepsi are competing with like Budweiser, right? Like they're both drinks, sure, but like Budweiser is not competing with, sodas. So it's just not the same market. I think it'll be an interesting legal battle if it does come to that.
I think, again, being a very elementary level judicial and financial analyst, like I think the one part of it that holds weight for me is thinking about them both as licensors and bidders for content. That's where I think the holdup really comes in. Maybe if you think about the Coke and Pepsi thing as like competing to be the premier soft drinks at a football stadium, that's kind of like where the versus, it's not going to, okay, maybe they can charge you 10 more cents for it at Walmart in the refrigerators by the cash registers. That's not really the consumer facing part of it that's going to matter. It's more so, like HBO just did a big deal with A24 where all their movies now go to HBO Max. If HBO Max is gone, there's one less company competing for that stuff. I think that's where the problems maybe come in more. But I think the consolidation side of this, it's not super related to sports, although obviously, the movement of the cable networks, which would happen under the Paramount bid, would have more direct impacts for sports fans. We don't know where that will go, but people are talking about the consolidation of CNN and CBS News, and there's rumors and reporting around, what the Trump administration thinks about CNN and whatnot. It's just interesting to me on this side of it, and something we also talk about a lot on this show is like, the place that corporate media kind of holds right now. And I just find it a little bit interesting that people who often will call out, like the conversation for years now has been the waning influence of corporate media. I'd say a decade, 2 decades, whatever, however far out you want to go, we've kind of known that this was coming. And yet now the idea of CNN and CBS News merging is being treated as, the sky is falling a little bit. And it's like, well, which is it? Right? Like that's been a weird subplot of this that somehow, like, I can't tell you the last time I watched or read something fascinating from CBS News that didn't come out of 60 Minutes, I would say. Or I guess Sunday mornings, their other show.
Yeah. What about the Bill Belichick interview?
Yeah, that was groundbreaking in a different kind of way. Anyway, I don't know if you guys have thoughts, because I just found it a little bit hypocritical to treat the degradation of CBS News as like a really meaningful subplot to this, when I just don't think it was a place that was doing work that mattered in a substantial way anymore, big picture, before this all happened.
I've had the same thought about the Warner Brothers side of this. I guess it would be the studio portion of it, where all I had heard was about how everybody in Hollywood was dreading the idea of Paramount buying Warner Brothers because it means one last legacy studio's going away and everyone's dreading it. And this is what they're fearing. And then it comes out, Netflix is buying it. And I get the exact same reaction. It's, oh my God, everybody's terrified that Netflix is. It's like, well, somebody's going to buy it. Like we've known it's for sale now. So it's like, who do you want to buy it if you don't want Netflix and don't want Paramount to buy it? It's like, it's not doing well on its own. So like, which is it?
Yeah. I don't think that, like, I don't want to make it sound as if I want journalism, like, let's just burn it down even further because what's the use? Like, I don't want to come across as like a fatalistic like that, but I guess just to me, the fix for television journalism is far more wide ranging and I guess like it's independent of who happens to own it or whether there's two of them together or there's layoffs or there's more influence by people I don't like. I mean, obviously, if the Saudi backing of this Ellison offer were to be truly meaningful, like that would be concerning. And like there are elements of this, we'll have to see how they pan out that would get my attention. But I just thought the idea of, CNN having new ownership as a general idea, I just don't see it making a big dent in the trends that are already happening as people are looking to reimagine news and sports journalism. Like it's just not really going to change the tides to me, Drew.
Yeah. If I had to look into the future and play out a hypothetical scenario where CNN is operating under Discovery Global, like that's a temporary stop. That's going to be a few years max until someone swoops in and buys a CNN brand. Because I mean, I've written for the site, like I just don't see a path forward for that company as a whole once 2028 comes around and they lose their sports rights, which is kind of the only driver of value that company will have. Someone's going to want the CNN brand, and maybe they're better off under the Paramount umbrella than they would be for whoever's buying it on a fire sale 3 or 4 years from now.
Yeah. The idea of like a TNT sports streaming service and some of the stuff that's popped out feels absurd to me. I don't know who on earth would pay for that. We're wondering what the market is for Fox One and ESPN Unlimited. I just can't imagine some of these things, even more pared down versions of these offerings being put to market. Yeah,
bundles. Yeah,
sure, but like then just let the acquisitions go through. I guess to me it's like as a consumer, as somebody who just kind of cares about the end result, like the idea of a year or two where TNT Sports is incredibly hard to get just makes me mad. Like that's kind of where I come down on. And I would say we don't have time for animated all casts. I would just say that to me, I know everybody is weeping. Our chat is going to send crying emojis here. We can't talk about Monstropolis, but I would just say like the end result here to me, it feels pretty obvious, whether it's Paramount or Netflix, as we get more of these mergers and things just kind of get, rearranged in this kind of tech forward environment. I feel like, Matt Bellany often talks on The Town and in his writing, like this theory of kind of these channels within the services. And I think that is where a lot of this is going to go, whether it's an HBO, channel within Netflix or it's a CNN channel within Paramount Plus. Like I don't, I think that a lot of this stuff is going to go that way. And I think we maybe as kind of people looking at it or who want to watch it and get the best stuff and get the most honest stuff, so to speak, like we should just be rooting for that rearrangement to go as well as it can, but it's going to happen. Like, you know what I mean? That I think people are treating some version of this Warner Brothers sale as if there's a good like utopian outcome that could result here, and it's just not really where it's going. I don't know if that's a somber note to end on.
The utopian outcome is hopefully it actually gets easier for consumers if there's consolidation, right? Like you have more brands under one umbrella, you have fewer services to subscribe to. I mean, that is like on the way towards utopia at least. And, the ownership implications obviously aren't great and all the layoffs that are going to happen and that type of thing. But, there is a reason why these deals are happening. It's like they assume on paper it is driving value for the consumer.
For sure. It's like, if we can't have everything be artistically and journalistically ideal, can it at least just be cheaper?
Yeah, exactly.
You know? All right, that'll wrap us up. Hit follow, hit subscribe. We'll be back for you at least one more time this week. Check out awfulannouncing.com in the meantime, and follow us across social media, X, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, wherever you're at, we're at as well, providing minute-to-minute coverage of all things sports media. Enjoy your Tuesday. We'll catch you next time.